All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling something super relevant, especially for anyone in business, really. Future-proofing your business using sustainable practices. And we've got a mountain of reports, articles, and case studies to unpack. Honestly, some of this stuff is wild.
Yeah, no kidding. It's a fast-moving area, that's for sure. What was once a nice to have is becoming essential, wouldn't you say, for any business, really, to stay ahead.
100%. And that's what we're exploring here. How is sustainability becoming the key? Not just to surviving, but actually thriving. And we're not just talking abstract ideas, we're talking companies making lab-grown shrimp. Lab-grown shrimp.
It's a perfect example of how, when we're pushed, we innovate. I mean, traditional shrimp farming, environmentally, it's a nightmare. This could be huge.
Totally. And it's not just food. There's circular denim now. Jeans designed from the get-go to be recycled into new clothes.
Amazing. It really shows you the possibilities.
Right. But hold on, before we go too far down that rabbit hole, let's take a step back. What does it actually mean to future-proof a business? I mean, through this sustainability lens.
It's a great question. Because it's more than just, slapping an eco label on something and calling it a day. A future-proof business sees sustainability as like part of its DNA. They're thinking long term. What happens when climate change really hits? Resource scarcity, social inequality. How do we adapt before it's too late?
It's about resilience, basically.
Exactly.
And one thing I'm seeing a lot in these sources is that it's investors, maybe more than anyone, who are driving this change. They're not just looking at the bottom line anymore.
100%. Investors are looking at what they call ESG factors, environmental, social, and governance. It's all about risk assessment, right? They want to know, is this business managing environmental risks, treating employees fairly, got strong ethical practices? If the answer to any of that is no, it's a red flag.
So it's not just feel-good stuff anymore. It's smart business.
Absolutely.
Speaking of smart business, let's dig into one of our case studies, Unilever. Specifically, their Hellmann's brand. They're trying to regain market share in the condiment world, believe it or not, using sustainability.
Mayonnaise trying to save the world. Who knew?
Right. It's a bit out there. But they've got these campaigns all about reducing food waste, sustainable sourcing. There's even a cookbook, Make Taste, Not Waste. Yeah. Clever.
Very clever. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
Is it legit? Or is this just greenwashing? Are they actually changing things deep down? Or is this a marketing tactic to appeal to, the eco-conscious shopper?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And honestly, we have to ask that question about any company making these kinds of claims. Because consumers, they're getting savvy. They can spot greenwashing from a mile away. So, yeah, a fancy campaign might work in the short term. But if it's not backed up by action, it'll backfire spectacularly.
Makes sense. Okay, so let's flip the script. Okay. Talk about a company that seems to have walked the walk, done a total of 180. Or they were a fossil fuel company, and now global leader in renewable energy.
Yeah, they're the poster child for transforming your business sustainably and actually thriving because of it. Their financials, better than ever since they made the shift. They're proving sustainability can be profitable.
That's a powerful message.
Yeah.
But let's be real. Going green isn't always easy. There are roadblocks. And one of the biggest, I think we both agree, is this greenwashing thing.
For sure. And then there's the whole issue of demand. It's fragmented. One of the articles had this great example. Imagine you're a small business, right? You want to use recycled packaging. But the supplier, they only sell it in bulk. Like way more than you could ever use. It's a huge barrier for smaller companies trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, it's like the system's working against them.
Kind of, yeah.
And I'm seeing this theme, too, about resistance from within companies, like internally.
Oh, absolutely. Change is hard, especially something like sustainability. You're going to have people who are skeptical, people worried about costs. You know how it is.
And some people are just resistant to anything new, period.
Yep. That's human nature. So the question becomes, how do you overcome that?
Right. How do you get everyone on board?
Leadership. It has to come from the top. The people in charge need to champion this. Make it clear that sustainability is a core value, not a fad.
Walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Exactly. Put your money where your mouth is, set ambitious goals, and hold everyone accountable.
Love it. Okay, so we've talked about the why, the challenges, the inspiration. But what I want to know now is, what can businesses actually do? What are the tangible steps to becoming more sustainable?
Yeah, let's get practical. And that's where we'll pick up in part 2. We'll ditch the buzzwords and get into the nitty-gritty.
Sounds good. Can't wait.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive. Still with us?
Good. Wouldn't miss it. In part 1, we laid the groundwork. What does it even mean to future-proof a business? Why investors are getting on board? And we saw some companies doing some, well, interesting things.
Some good, some maybe not so good.
Exactly. We talked about the challenges too. Greenwashing, the struggles small businesses face, even with the best intentions.
Right. But now, let's get into the how-to, the practical steps businesses can actually take.
Yes. Let's get tactical.
Okay, first up, operations. This is where you'll find a lot of easy wins, environmentally speaking. Think energy efficiency, waste reduction, sourcing materials responsibly, that kind of thing.
One report actually suggested starting with like a full-blown sustainability audit to see where you're at.
Love it. Totally agree. It gives you that baseline, shows you where you can make the biggest impact.
And once you know where you stand, there's so much tech out there to help you improve. I was reading about platforms that track energy use, for example, and suggest ways to cut back.
It's amazing what's out there. And don't forget renewables. Solar and wind power are getting cheaper all the time, even for smaller businesses.
True, true. Okay, so we've covered operations, but what about the supply chain? That can be a black box, sustainability-wise.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You got to know where your stuff is coming from, how it's made. Transparency's key here. Collaboration, too. Work closely with your suppliers. Make sure they're meeting your standards. Share best practices, that sort of thing.
One of our case studies actually highlighted that, building strong relationships with suppliers.
Exactly. It's not about blame. It's about working together. Sometimes it might even mean helping your suppliers become more sustainable themselves.
And being willing to walk away, right? If a supplier just isn't aligned with your values.
Sometimes, yeah, tough choices. But at the end of the day, you're responsible for that whole chain, from raw material to finished product.
Makes sense. All right, let's shift gears a bit to something a little more, I don't know, exciting. Products and services. This is where things get innovative.
Oh, yeah. We've already talked about the lab-grown shrimp, the circular denim, but that's just scratching the surface. Companies are coming up with amazing ways to make products that are good for the planet, good for people.
Plant-based foods, sustainable fashion, eco-friendly packaging. I'm seeing it all over these reports.
And it's not just about the materials either. It's about design. Products that are durable, easy to repair. Products that last, basically. Moving away from that throwaway mentality.
The circular economy, right? Designing things to be reused, repaired, or recycled so they never really become waste.
Exactly. Closing the loop, keeping resources in play. It's the future.
Okay, so we've talked operations, supply chains, products. But what about the people? The human side of all that?
Ah, yes. The heart of the matter, really. Because any sustainability strategy to really work has to involve people.
It's about getting employees on board,
Yeah.
right? Empowering them, creating a culture where sustainability is everyone's responsibility.
Couldn't have said it better myself. One source really emphasized training, giving your employees the knowledge and skills to make a difference, and creating an environment where people feel valued, motivated to do their best.
Because when employees actually care about sustainability, it becomes part of the company, right?
Yeah.
Not just something they're told to do.
Exactly. It's genuine then, not a top-down thing.
And it goes beyond the company walls, too. It's about engaging your customers, the community, being part of something bigger.
For sure. Transparency's huge here. Be open about your journey, the good, the bad. Be responsive to feedback. Have those tough conversations.
Build trust. Make actual progress.
Right on. Now, before we jump to part 3, want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, measurement. Can't manage what you don't measure, as they say.
So true. But it's not about just hoarding data. It's about using it, right? To get better.
Absolutely. Set targets, track your progress, adjust as needed. And don't be shy about sharing your results. Accountability is key for building trust, credibility.
One thing that really struck me going through all these sources is there's no one right way to do this. Sustainability, I mean.
Yeah, that's true. What works for a giant corporation might not work for a mom and pop shop down the street. Each business has to find its own path.
But there are some core principles, right, that apply across the board.
Definitely. Strong leadership, a clear strategy, always striving to improve. And remember, this isn't a destination, it's a journey. You'll hit roadblocks, for sure. But keep learning, keep adapting. That's the key.
Keep moving forward. Now, as we wrap up part 2, I'm left with this thought. Given all the momentum we're seeing, could we get to a point where sustainable practices are just the norm? Like, it's just how business is done, period.
Ooh, good question. And one we'll dig into in part 3.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into future-proofing your business with sustainable practices.
Glad you stuck with us.
Of course. We've covered a lot of ground. The why, the how, real-world examples, even some practical steps businesses can take.
Yeah, we've really gotten into the weeds.
We have. But for this last part, I kind of want to shift gears a bit. Talk about something that I don't think gets enough attention in these conversations, the human element.
Interesting. What do you mean by that?
Well, we talk a lot about data and metrics and strategies,
Hmm.
which, don't get me wrong, are super important.
Oh, for sure.
But at the end of the day, sustainability is about people, right? Making sure everyone, now and in the future, can actually live a good life on a planet that's not, falling apart.
It's easy to forget that sometimes, get lost in the numbers.
Totally. And that's why I think purpose is so important for businesses that are, really trying to do this right. It can't just be about checking boxes or making a quick buck. It has to be about something bigger.
I agree. It has to come from a genuine place, a belief that you're making a positive impact.
And I'm seeing that in these sources too. The companies
Yeah.
that are really nailing sustainability,
Yeah.
they're the ones that are truly committed.
Yeah. It's not just about doing less harm. It's about actually doing good.
And that resonates, right? With employees, with customers,
Yeah.
especially younger generations. They want to support businesses that share their values.
Absolutely. They're voting with their wallets. And if your business can tap into that, show them you're on the same page. That's powerful.
So it's more than just like doing the right thing. It's about inspiring people, creating a movement almost.
Exactly. And that's where the magic happens, I think, when we all work together.
So, okay. I know there are probably some people listening, business leaders maybe, who are thinking, this is great, but it's overwhelming. Where do I even start? What advice would you give them?
Well, first off, don't try to boil the ocean, right? Start small. Pick one area that speaks to you, to your business, and focus on that.
Baby steps.
Exactly. Maybe it's reducing energy use, or starting a recycling program, sourcing more ethical materials, whatever makes sense for you.
Find that one thing and make a difference.
Yep. And then go from there. Once you get some momentum, you can expand. It's a marathon, not a sprint. You'll hit bumps in the road, but just keep learning, keep adapting.
And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Oh, absolutely. There are so many resources out there, consultants, nonprofits, industry groups. You don't have to do this alone.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Okay, before we wrap up, I want to go back to that question I asked at the end of part 2. Could sustainable practices become, I don't know, just the way things are done? Like not even a special thing, just business as usual?
Yeah, you really got me
Yeah.
thinking about that one.
What do you think?
Honestly, I think it's totally possible. We're already seeing it happen. The pressure from investors, customers demanding more, people realizing how interconnected everything is. It's all pointing in that direction.
Where sustainability isn't just a nice to have, it's the expectation.
Right. It's becoming table stakes. And the companies that are embracing this, they're the ones that are going to win in the long run.
Because they're not just keeping up, they're setting the pace.
Exactly. And that's pretty exciting when you think about it. They're building the future.
On that note, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. And to everyone listening, we hope you've gotten something out of this.
Some food for thought, some inspiration, some practical tips.
And hopefully a renewed sense of purpose. Because at the end of the day, we all have a role to play in building a sustainable future.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and let's make a difference together.